you understand how all this stuff works without getting into the nitty gritty of neuroscience, quantum physics, neurobiology, and all this stuff, and epigenetics and everything. It's really just understanding language, how we communicate with ourselves, other people, and how through that process we have emotions that come about, which give us more information and signal our physical body to behave in one way or another. 95% of us, we know through Dr. Joe's work, is unconscious. So when I got introduced to NLP, I was like, oh man, like all this stuff makes sense now. And here's a practical roadmap of how I can create change and learn how to create change. And it just kept leading to one thing. And then as we know, like what we focus on expands. So when I got more focused on NLP, I started understanding all this unconscious information from the years of Dr. Joe and everything. And I remember you were laughing at me at the practitioner event. I'm like writing on the side Dr. Joe notes because I'm like, he uses different language. Maybe it's deeper into what they're saying, but I'm just connecting dots. And that's NLP. Like you're able to connect things about you internally and your external world. And so that led me to hiring Kara 3 months later as my coach. And it just has changed my world inside and out so much that I've taken the route with you to be a practitioner and implement that in my process, helping people create change and optimize their health and their performance. Oh, what's up, Window?
What's up,
Oh,
dude?
there he is.
What's up, son?
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well, man. Been up since like 5.
Oh, I beat you. I got up at 3:45.
Oh, nice. There you go. It's been a minute since I've been up that early.
Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't.
Without going back to bed, I should say.
Wouldn't recommend it.
How was your sauna session?
Dope. So dope. Can you hear me good?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. I got in there. I've been doing reading this book, The Oxygen Advantage. The guy at the event recommended Patrick McCown. I've been doing some breath holds, trying to reduce cortisol. So that was good. Good little prep.
Nice.
You
Well,
look
sweet.
good with your chest out.
Yeah, I'm trying to just like keep this ointment on my tattoo without getting all of my clothes as much as I can. So I don't need to leave the house till a little bit. So I trying to keep it from rubbing and all that good stuff. It's almost healed, pretty much done. Let me move this so you can see. I don't know if you'll be able to see what's gonna be the best way. There we go.
Dope. I can see like it's a little bit red, huh?
Yeah, it's still healing. I mean, it's just a couple days ago, but yeah.
Yeah, huh?
What's that?
I haven't seen it in person yet, I guess.
No, not yet. Still work in progress. Going back in end of March to wrap it up and just kind of like tie it all into this piece and around here. So it'll be nice. But yeah, speaking of the event, I figured we just hop right into it because today probably gonna be like a shorter episode, just you and I guess to um, give context to today's episode. Mitch and I went to St. Pete, Florida. Like 2 weeks ago now?
Yeah.
And went to our NLP practitioner training event. It was a 4-day event, about 12-hour days, and lots of information, lots of empowering information. And now to earn our certification, we have a test to take and a 30-step action plan that they give you as like a study guide to reinforce the learnings and to prepare you for the test. And so the first two assignments were something that I figured would be a good starting point to do podcast episodes to reinforce the learning for us, but also to share with others, obviously you listening, and just to kind of just get some more context and really just to check in on each other to make sure we're holding each other accountable and to see if we have any critiques to our answers. So the way that the test works, I believe, is each step is actually a day. So they design it so it's like a 30-day process. So you can take the 30-step action plan and apply it to the test. So you can just do them both at the same time. They encourage open notes. They encourage doing it with a partner, so on and so forth. So each day, the assignment is to read some pages, to listen to some audios, and then so far, it's to write 100 to 200 words per day per topic. And the first topic was just going through an overview of NLP, Neuro Linguistic Programming. And the objective was to write 100 to 200 words about what NLP means to us. So, with all that being said, I figured we would just share with one another, give any critiques, and then have a discussion about it. And then we can move on to the second day, second assignment, because it's the same assignment, 100, 200 words. really geared at, what was our, I guess, main takeaway, something we learned from it, something that reinforced our learning at the training, and how we can apply it to our lives. So, Mitch, do you want to just go ahead and I guess, we'll just, read our paragraphs to one another, and then we can talk about it and then have a discussion about the macro of NLP, and we'll just kick it off with day one, assignment one.
Yeah, so like I told you, we were texting back and forth. I did like 2 or 3 iterations. Like
Hey, Mitch, why don't you get your mic a little bit closer? Normally you're loud, but now it's like you sound shy.
can you hear me now?
There you go.
Hear me?
Yeah, you can turn the volume up too on your mic.
It's super loud. I just don't want it loud. What about now?
I mean, normally you're projecting your voice. It's always clear. It's always heard. And now it's like,
Hey man, I got some more awareness around the way that I show up in my body language and my voice. So I'm trying to be aware, right?
there you go. All right. Well,
Well,
what do you got? I know you said you had a couple versions, but were you able to distill it to one?
yeah, I mean, I think it's still a work in progress. I mean, I kind of wanted to see what you got and kind of compare notes. But I wrote some stuff down the first day, the first evening. I looked at it and then woke up. I was doing a meditation. I'm like, that's not what it is to me. Yeah, I felt like the reading. So we had to do a reading.
Hmm.
Read a couple
And
pages.
by the way, we're not doing like a spiritual read. We're reading pages. Just for those listening, that here we did a reading. We read pages.
So I felt like the pages were kind of confusing, and it wasn't like the way I felt about it. So when I woke up the next morning, I did a little meditation. This is kind of what came out. Thus, as humans, we are all running a unique program that defines our individual view of the world based off of what we experience both consciously and unconsciously beginning in childhood. Programs get stored in the subconscious mind as values and beliefs that create our internal representation of the world. Neuro Linguistic Programming is a model that allows us to communicate better with ourselves and others by understanding. Oh, I guess I was going to add something. By understanding about, like, I guess what I was going to add there is like, what is it? Delegating. What are the 3 things we do?
Distorting and generalizing.
Exactly. So this process allows us to evaluate our stored programs so that we can edit, alter, or delete limiting beliefs that are keeping us from becoming the highest versions of ourselves. By removing these limiting beliefs from our subconscious, we're able to communicate with our higher self and be clear on our purpose, passion, and life.
I like it. I like a lot of things you touched on that I didn't touch on, and I could see how it could be difficult to narrow the different versions down to one. So yeah, like I said, I love it. I don't have any critiques because it's the objective was, what is NLP to you, and that's your IR, your internal representation, your conscious representation of what NLP means to you. So, and I agree with some of the points you made. So that's the thing about this test. I think it's a written form, and I think that's why they put 100, 200 words, because I think each question we it's not like a pick a choice, or fill in the blank or fill in the bubble. It's submit 100, 200 word segment per question. And I think that's why I haven't looked at the test yet, but from what people in the group are saying, and then what the workbook, the 30-day or 30-step action plan says, like they coincide with one another. I think that's it, because they say you're going to have to keep a document for the 30-step action plan of your answers. And I assume that the test is going to be the same format. So that's why they're having you keep each day, each question in a document. So again, yeah.
Reading binder thing.
Well, no, the 30-day action plan, the thing we downloaded.
Yeah, no. Did you put it in a 3-ring binder?
Oh, did I put it in? No, not yet. I just got the hole punch from Jackie, so I'll do that soon. But I have it with my binder from the workshop that we went to, with all the like the workbook from the training. So, but yeah, I like I said, I think it sounds great. I think there's some points in there you made that I wanted to make, but I was trying to mind the 200 word count, and I took a different approach to what I put into it, which I don't think there's a right or wrong. But in terms of critiques to yours, I don't think I have any. Like I'm curious, what do you think? Like reading it out loud. I'd imagine maybe that's the first time you've read it out loud. Do you have any critiques for yourself or any thoughts on that?
Well, I had some additional notes over here, just kind of tying in some of the things that were in that were in the pages that we had to read.
Mm-hmm.
Reading, distorting, delegating, those kind of things. Just adding some of those keywords in there is really all I want to do.
Okay.
Just understand that neuro linguistic programming is communication, and it's how we speak, and it kind of comes out more in day 2, talking about like the body language and how we speak to each other, and
Yep. The modalities.
Absolutely.
Is that what it was, right? The modalities?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, sounds good. So I'll just read mine. And what the process I took to create my paragraph, if you will, was I just took notes on certain sections that I think were meaningful to what NLP means to me. And then I just kind of put it all together, critiqued it, moved things around, added some and took some out, and came up with this paragraph. So the question is, what is NLP to you? To me, what I wrote is, NLP is a model of how we communicate to ourselves and others as we process information from the outside world that creates our mindset and our belief systems. NLP is more about noticing patterns in our lives or becoming conscious of our past, present, unconscious selves at the moment so we can consciously change our reality in one or many aspects. NLP is a combination of our nervous system, our mind, in which our five senses process and experience with our language and our emotions. This process creates an internal representation as our quote-unquote code that we give meaning to and operate from in life on mostly an unconscious level. NLP essentially is how we use language to influence our physical body to consistently create our subjective reality, whether desired or undesired, through our beliefs, emotions, and behavior. NLP can help us understand why we do what we do, how we get to a certain point in our lives, and how we can model success in others that we gain inspiration from in our lives. So that was what I wrote.
Yeah. How many words is that? It sounded like you counted them out. Did you count them out?
That came up to 173. So I use Grammarly. I have the free version, I think, so you can install it as a plugin for Google Chrome or on your phone. And so like when you're texting or like writing anything anywhere, as long as an app will allow Grammarly to integrate with it, it'll pop up. But if you go to the desktop version, which I have for all my writing, whether it's a post, a blog, whatever it is, I just will copy and paste it into there, and it'll give you the grammar critiques, but it'll also give you a word count.
Oh, nice.
So I just have a separate tab open up right next to my document.
You download this app, and then you just, I guess you run it through different apps?
Yeah, it's like doing the Bitmoji type thing. Like you download an app for Bitmoji, and then you integrate it into your keyboard. Grammarly is the same thing. You download the app on on your phone or your device, and you can integrate it with your keyboard. But the desktop version is different. The desktop version you can install as a plugin, I believe it's what it's called, for Chrome, Google Chrome. And you can use the desktop version where you can actually go and save all your files. You can copy and paste whatever you want into it. And then depending on what level you pay for, you can get deeper and deeper critiques in terms of writing, style, format, grammar, punctuation, and all that. I just use the free version, which allows you to just copy and paste or write in there. So you can actually like have like a document in Grammarly, and then it gives you all the suggestions of critiques and things like that to a degree. When you pay for it and you pay for the next level up, whatever, you get more in depth, like just writing critiques and all that. So yeah, the app is kind of useless on the phone or device other than per app you use to text or to write text, it'll critique it there. But if you want to write a post, for example, on your phone and have Grammarly check it out, I think you can install it through your Notes app too. But I like it on the desktop because you can save all of your articles like a project. So you could technically write like every chapter of a book, and then you could have it edited each one as you go. So yeah, that's what I use. It works out pretty well for me.
I just mentioned the book thing.
Yeah. So before we move on to the second day as assignment, let's have a discussion about NLP. I think it would be interesting to talk about how we came to be aware of NLP specifically and what led us to the training. And I know, I'll just start off briefly. Like, I spoke at that event back in January of 2020 that my friend Isaac Stegman put on, and I was introduced to 3 people that are NLP master practitioners. And I know you and I have been, fascinated with Dr. Joe Dispenza's work around quantum physics in terms of thoughts and emotions and behavior, aka our personality, and how that creates our subjective personal reality and what is reality. And then digging deep into the smallest parts of matter actually light and energy, and how we can influence that understanding through our body to create reality externally based on how we feel and what we believe about ourselves internally. So moving forward to the event where I met Kara, who is now my coach, Jimmy and Chucky, it kind of like gave me a new perspective on Dr. Joe's work and the biology of belief type stuff. Is like seems to be like a step above Dr. Joe's work in terms of like simple, like Dr. Joe's work's deep, but NLP, it's like it's deep, but it's also like more surface level, practical, like you understand how all this stuff works without getting into the nitty gritty of neuroscience, quantum physics, neurobiology, and all this stuff, and epigenetics and everything. It's really just understanding language, how we communicate with ourselves, other people, and how through that process we have emotions that come about, which give us more information and signal our physical body to behave in one way or another. 95% of us, we know through Dr. Joe's work, is unconscious. So when I got introduced to NLP, I was like, oh man, like all this stuff makes sense now. And here's a practical roadmap of how I can create change and learn how to create change. And it just kept leading to one thing. And then as we know, like what we focus on expands. So when I got more focused on NLP, I started understanding all this unconscious information from the years of Dr. Joe and everything. And I remember you were laughing at me at the practitioner event. I'm like writing on the side Dr. Joe notes because I'm like, he uses different language. Maybe it's deeper into what they're saying, but I'm just connecting dots. And that's NLP. Like you're able to connect things about you internally and your external world. And so that led me to hiring Kara 3 months later as my coach. And it just has changed my world inside and out so much that I've taken the route with you to be a practitioner and implement that in my process, helping people create change and optimize their health and their performance. And so it's just really cool to see us, what we've been talking about for years, and just getting into, and just like now it's like, oh, here's where we could have started with a base. We dove straight in unknowingly, but now NLP is like it's connecting all those deeper dots to where I actually understand the more complicated things on at least a basic level, rather than before I'm just like, I get quantum thoughts and like what could and what is and what, like there's so many parallels possibly happening right now, but like how does that apply to my life? And NLP was that bridge, I'd say, to the gap I had.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, pretty much in the same boat. It's weird. I've talked about my journey here on the podcast of healing, of going from Lyme and mold and diabetes to where I'm at today, a health coach. And it's like my journey has the way the next step has always been lit. It's always been a progression, and the thing that I need next is always out there. And so, but I have to really integrate where I'm at now. And so, I guess my journey with all of this, I mean, and we talk about this too a lot. Like we both did a lot of the nutritional and lifestyle changes, and we didn't do the mindset stuff. We didn't happen upon that until much later in our journeys. But I think we can both agree that was the switch that needed to flip. And so that's why when we are working with clients, that's the first thing we do. We're going through mindset. We're checking that baggage at the door. We're getting rid of your shit, and so that we can move forward, so that we won't sabotage ourselves going forward. So, like I said, I'd made a lot of nutritional and lifestyle changes and was doing really well, and found myself in another traumatic brain injury. Had a really bad car accident, and so a lot of the stuff, had to kind of dig in on some of the things that I'd learned, and just so happened somebody handed me a Dr. Joe book and Becoming Supernatural, and I start realizing I'm a victim, that I think I'm a victim, and that I think I'm never going to get better, and I start hearing all of these limiting beliefs, and so I wake up, I'm no longer the program. I can see the program is. I get to decide, is that program serving me, or do I want to let it go? And so I had a lot of letting it go work, at the same time. So I start doing Dr. Joe. I start doing the meditations. I start having breakthroughs. I start thinking about the emotional roller coaster, right? I start having these amazing breakthroughs, and then old patterns return, and I'm in the river of change, and I'm getting my results. Then I get like a hint of something else, and that's DNRS, and that's dynamic neural retraining. And so dynamic neural retraining work with Dr. Joe because it's the same quantum physics, but now I've got an understanding of Dr. Joe and how to create a feeling in my body, and I'm more aware. Well, now I take DNRS, and it's like another process, but it's simpler. Well, it's more applicable like during the day. So Dr. Joe's a meditation. This is more of like you're awake, and it's an exercise that you're doing with your subconscious mind. But that got me even more understanding. And just like you said, now that I'm doing DNRS and I'm doing Dr. Joe, I'm going back and I'm revisiting breaking the habit of being yourself and getting more into Dr. Joe and really making those connections and understanding. And then Josh comes along with this NLP shit, and I'm like, what is this, man? And we started having these profound conversations. And I was going through DNRS, and Josh was just going through NLP, and we were making all these connections because there's a process called mental and emotional release that we do with our clients that we just were starting to train on. And Josh was going through that, and I heard a lot of the same language, a lot of the language when I've done with energy workers. And so it's just connecting these dots, but ultimately going down and learning about what NLP is. It's exactly what I've been looking for, in that I'm always looking for ways that I can help people more. And I'm looking to help them the way that I've helped myself. And so how can I share mindset? It's always been a tough one for me because it can be so woo, it's got that perception of like, not a lot of people, I don't know about woo, but like people aren't ready for it until they're ready for it. I certainly wasn't. And so how do we have that conversation? And, you and I were kind of going back and forth on, should we do mindset? Should we not? Josh like, yes, you got to do it. And then I'm just, I don't know. It doesn't resonate. But ultimately, when I got exposed to NLP, it was the next step. It's how I can help clients more. And it ties this whole picture together. And I know that was a long rant, but it's super, super powerful, and it means a lot to me.
Yeah, no, that was beautiful. It's like what Kanye West refers to those rants as a symphony. It's just making magic happen. So no, that was great. And the one thing that comes to mind, it's two parts. One, NLP I see as a roadmap for change. And that's what they say. Like NLP is a tool to model success, model excellence. You see someone doing something you want to do. You can use NLP to understand what you need to do to change inside and out to make that a reality. And so we do this naturally, unconsciously at a young age. We look up to mentors and heroes and idols. We call them role models or whatever. And they're typically people that are pretty famous or very successful in an area that we aspire to go after. And for me, it was Dave Mirra with BMX. And then now, like I always talk about, Kerwin Ray, like a beautiful model for me of what I want to do. And so that's the first thing that comes to mind. Is like NLP is a way to create change in your life, but also to understand how you can model someone that is doing something similar or exactly like you want to do, and look at the attributes, like look at what steps they took and the path they took to be successful, and then reverse engineer that about what do you need to change inside and out about yourself. And that leads me to the second point of like, you and I we started out as health coaches, and that came from we didn't start out that way, but we started with the coaching side of things, and how we got introduced together was being a health coach, an advocate for optimizing your health and being the best version of yourself inside and out. Along the way, through all the shit we've gone through, which, listen back to previous episodes, the beginning of me talking about my journey, Jackie's journey, when Mitch got introduced to the Gray Matters podcast, it's all the same. There was something catastrophic that happened that challenged our life at a very visceral level, a very fear for our life level. Like it wasn't just a joke that we were afraid of being judged or not making the team or not getting the job or divorce or a breakup, like whatever. Like those things happen, of course, but there was pivotal moments in our lives that challenged our health and challenged our life. In those moments, as we know with NLP, like we made an unconscious decision at that point to audit ourselves and our choices to become as healthy and happy as we can to preserve our health and our quality of life. And those unconscious decisions we made, amongst the many, were a non-negotiable for the food we're going to put in our body, for the thoughts that we're going to have and give energy to, and the way we're going to show up and behave, with the understanding that we're humans, we're flawed, but we're always striving to improve even just a little bit every day. And as we know, what James Clear talks about in Atomic Habits, each step you take that's aligned with the outcome you want is like a vote towards the type of person and the reality that you want to create for yourself. Adversely, every step you take that is incongruent with what you say you want to be true about your life is one vote in the opposite direction. The thing is, just like any voting, it's not about 100%, it's not about perfection, it's about a majority. Because that majority just builds and builds more momentum, and like a snowball, as you keep going and rolling it, it gets bigger and bigger to the point where you feel unstoppable. And that's the objective. The objective with NLP is to become as aware as we possibly can. And we've used that awareness and education and continue to use that perspective to grow and to learn, to become the best version of ourselves. We've put that into a purpose to help other people which we've also realized that we can make a living doing that. And what more of a fulfilling way and a satisfying way to earn an income than helping other people, not just doing some mindless job that you don't enjoy or that has no, real value that you see subjectively, but we see something as being super valuable because it saved our lives many times. And now we're being able to share that with other people and support ourselves by doing that. So that was just, to me, NLP came to be the final tool in my awareness to create change and to maintain change. But Dr. Joe just opened up the doors of like self-awareness, getting to know myself. Meditation, it's to get familiar with yourself. I think NLP is like what you said, DNRS is like, it's like the next step above all that, though. It's like in terms of practicality.
And that's like what I want to do for my clients. I mean, that's what we're always trying to do. I think both of us went through a journey. Like, I'll speak for myself. I mean, I thought I was going to die at 20, I don't know, 25 years old. I was like, there's no way I'm going to make it to 30. But I bounced back, man. I came back from the dead and I got my life back. And I just realized like, it wasn't that easy. Now, I didn't know what the hell I was doing for the first, 4 or 5 years. But once I started seeing the bigger picture, right? Once the obstacles got out of the way, and just like we do in NLP, when we remove the baggage, we can see things more clearly. I could see how clearly this could affect anybody's life. And if we look around, everybody is so sick, and I just want to help. And NLP was the thing that just put the cherry on top, because the baggage is everything. I said it earlier. I can give you the perfect plan. You can go do it for 6 months, but are you going to stick with it? It's like the Jenny Craig. You're going to show up for 6 months and weigh in on Monday morning, and after you're done, like, what happens after that? Are you going to go back to being who you were? And if you don't have that awareness, my guess is yes. I've seen it with all my clients. Whenever you and I were debating about this, should we do mindset? Should I do mindset? There was a big turning point when we're discussing that, and I had 3 or 4 new clients, and they all started off really good, and they all shit the bed like 2 months into it. Like, one of them took had a cheat day. One of them just ghosted me for a couple of weeks. And I'm like, what's going on here? And diving deeper into that, and now having a tool to do that in a process that's been modeled after experts in their field, so that it works. You trust the process, you do it, and it works. And if you've got rapport, which we're going to be talking about here in a minute, with the client, and you can lead, they're going to follow you. That's what they want. They want what we have, and we want to give that to them. And absolutely, it's the most fulfilling thing on the planet. I had a new client last night, and he was just like, man, we got off the call. I'm like, what's your favorite part of the day? And he's like, man, you're the real deal, dude. He goes, this program was more than I ever thought I would pay. And he goes, I know that it's for a reason. I know that this is going to work. He's like, I know that you're not in it for the money. I know you want to help, and I know we're going to get good results. And one thing he said that really, really liked, he said, Mitch, I was going to tell you at the end of this call that my life is in your hands. And I said, he goes, but now I know my life is in my hands. And I was like, bingo, you win today. A+.
100%.
And that's what, man, that shit fired me up, brother.
Yeah, no, I love it. That's why we do what we do. And that's one of the first things I tell my clients on my onboarding call with them is like, this is a do with process. I'm going to lead you to the pond, so to speak. I'm going to teach you how to fish. It's your job to fish. If you're hungry, you gotta learn how to eat. It's a do with process. And that's why I go through the onboarding process, let them know like, hey, you got four doors you can pick, A to D. D being not going through the door, and A going straight through. You're going to get great results. And I think that's really, really important awareness. But something you spoke to, and this is the last point I want to make before we move on. I'd like to hear what you think about this, but something you said about the baggage part. How many times do we get asked, what do you want? What do you want in life? What do you want to do? What do you want to be true about your life? What's a goal of yours? And the baggage that is essentially a filter that we see the world through is literally our unconscious beliefs about ourselves and the world around us and what's possible. So when we have someone asks us, what's your goal? We always shoot lower than what we truly want, because that baggage is telling us maybe that's not possible. Maybe you're not able to do that. Maybe that's not going to work out, or your parents or someone. There's a lot of influences, and typically that's not conscious. We react. We don't respond. We emotionally react, and that weighs us down. And that's what I think NLP comes in so handy is because you start to understand yourself. You start to understand you can't set a clear and compelling intention for your life that you're going to be drawn to until you get rid of the baggage. The baggage is weighing you down. It's this filter that is it's a facade of what it could be possible for your life. And I think that that's one of the most important things that I've taken away from NLP is with that we can understand ourselves. With Dr. Joe Dispenza work, meditation, journaling, like quantum stuff, like all these tools are really to understand who you are, understand your limiting beliefs are bullshit. They're just made up. And what you want to be true about your life, you can focus on, and that will expand to see all the opportunities. We go through that training with the focus and the gorillas. You know, we're counting basketballs being passed, so we're so focused on it, we don't even see this big gorilla walk through. And we use that to teach our clients as like that's an analogy for all the gorilla moments, all the moments that you pass by because you're so focused on what you don't want to be true that you're not even able to see the keys to your success are right in front of you. And I think that's one of the most amazing things of NLP and the work that we do is we create a level of awareness in self that allows them to be empowered to do the work. Because we're not going to, there's no coach, there's no tool, there's no amount of money, there's no anything that is going to solve your problem if you don't utilize it. And then you go and blame this person or that thing for your reality when you're at cause. And that's where the empowerment symbol cause, being at cause is greater than at effect. And that's true empowerment.
Yeah, the one thing I would say for the audience is another way to look at it is Josh is using, language like filter. And I would say, another way to look at it is a program. And the way Dr. Joe kind of explains, that's exactly what I'm hearing in my head is
I love the program analogy. I love it because I always say to clients, I'm like, think of it this way when I'm explaining it. We're in 2021. You're trying to operate Windows 95 right now. How do you think that's going to work with like an actual piece of software? It's probably not even going to load, let alone have glitches.
And if you look around, most people are asleep at the wheel, right? They're in their programs. We're all programmable beings, and we have these beliefs and perceptions that we hardwire into our subconscious so that we don't have to think about them, and they're not at our conscious level. It's there for when we need it to react and not have to think. But if you're never aware of the program and you can't see, it's like you got to wake up. I mean, I guess that's what consciousness is saying. I've got these thoughts and I've got these beliefs they're really shaping my world. And until you realize that and wake up, I mean, you are asleep, and you're just you're being ran by your beliefs, and you're calling it destiny, but you're not actively creating or doing anything about it. You're just holding on tight. So like whatever happens is meant to happen, right? And that's being in effect. That's excuses, right? And so causing effect and being aware of that program, and that shit is not pretty. There's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that come out of that process, so but it's the juice is worth the squeeze. What we say in our training is that the energy of the resistance, what is it, Josh, the resistance, how do you say it?
The greater the resistance, the greater the reward.
So the reward, the energy of the reward, the energy of the resistance is going to be equal or greater in the reward.
It's the energy of that reward is all bound up in the process, meaning the resistance, the journey you have to take, the beliefs and skills you have to acquire, like all of that resistance and that maybe that fear, that anxiety, that negative energy, it's all the energy of what you want bound up in the process that you have to break through. And like what Kerwin says, like you can't have a breakthrough without stress. Just like a diamond needs pressure and heat, or a rock, or whatever the actual, I got debated on this on an Instagram post using this analogy. So I was like, it's not a rock, it's whatever. And I was like, you get the idea. So whatever that material is that we could call a rock, we could call a pebble. I don't know the technical term for what the specific type of rock is. It needs pressure and heat to turn into a beautiful diamond over time.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess just wrapping that up, I mean, I love just the visualization of waking up and seeing the program for what it is, and taking a second and looking at it and going, oh man, this is me. Like, I don't like this shit. I don't like that shit. I don't like this. This is not serving me. I didn't put that there. So if it's not serving me, I can let it go and I can decide what I do want. And that's the beauty, man. And that's the beauty of NLP, bro, because all these other avenues, which I think are amazing. I still do them every single day. I'm a big Dr. Joe fan. I still do Dr. Joe. I still do some DNRS, if I'm not feeling my best. But this shit takes a fucking year. Okay, I was in a DNRS group, and I was in a group of people, and everybody's in the group, and there's a woman who's teaching the class who had autoimmune disease, who had overcome it, who had like debilitating chronic fatigue and insomnia and all these things, and just couldn't get out of bed. So she's here teaching. It took her 2 to 3 years. That's the unconscious mind. That's repetition. That's daily repetition. Driving that into your subconscious mind. Repetition, repetition, repetition. But you got to think, man. If you're having to do that repetition and you're counting on that to get that to stick for you to get your result, and that takes a lot of time, you still got the limiting beliefs there. So you still got, that's why it takes so much time, because you got to fight through those thoughts. You got to fight them back. It's like, oh man, here comes the shit show again. I call it Miserable Mitch. Right? Miserable Mitch is around. If a Miserable Mitch is around for 23 hours of the day, and for 1 hour I'm manifesting what I want, you can see how that's going to take some time. And where NLP comes in, bro, I gotta tell the story real quick. I'm long-winded, but this lady at the show, demonstrating how we can get over these lifelong phobias in 10 minutes. And this lady, they call her up on stage, like, who's got a phobia? I thought I had one. I go up there, I'm afraid of snakes. No, this woman had a phobia. She was afraid of elevators. Okay, she's a 60-year-old woman. She's worked in New York her whole life. She works on the 17th floor. She's walking up and down the floor because she's terrified of tight spaces. Because she was a kid, she was traumatized. Her brother locked her in a box and locked her in a box. Something I would have probably done to my brother. So we got to think about those things. But this woman was scarred, man. And they're like, hey, who wants to come up here and demonstrate their phobia? She raised her hand. She tells what's going on. They ask her to come up, and she knows she's going to have to test it. She starts crying immediately. She's that emotional that she can't even go up there because she thinks that they're going to make her get an elevator. They go, hey, listen, you don't have to get an elevator. Just do the process with us. And they basically put her through kind of like a hypnosis type of process. It's not what you would think, where you're just out on your back and, on the couch or whatever, but just an easy process, just kind of guiding you through some subconscious stuff.
Yeah, they got her into a trance, kind of like when you're driving and you're like, oh, I come home, or you're watching television. You're not aware of other things. You're just like in a trance.
Yeah, and so what they're doing is they're having her disassociate from the trigger, the energy around the memory. And you can see her, man, as she's doing it, her eyes are wrinkling up. But as the time goes by, those eyebrows start relaxing. You see her start taking belly breaths. She's relaxing. And after 10 minutes, they said, do you remember what you came up here for? And she said something crazy. It was like off the wall. It wasn't related to why she was up there, right? She didn't even remember what she was upset about. And I'm getting chills right now. I mean, we all ran to the elevator. She's riding up and down the elevator after 60 years of dealing with this, was so moved going up there. She's crying. She's emotional. And she's just dancing, going up and down the elevator. And I had a similar experience myself. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, do you want to take 10 minutes to do this and get out of your way really quick, or do you want to take a year or two?
Yeah, and that's one of the things they highlighted. They're like, how long does change, take to happen? And they're like, oh, like weeks, months, years. Like, no, it happens in an instant.
Yeah.
The time it took for that moment was the time you needed to decide you wanted to change, unconsciously and consciously. Because we can always consciously say, yeah, we want this, we want that. And that's what the 4 bodies represent. Look at it like a snowman. You got 4 circles. The top's your purest intention. That's your spirit. Below that is your mind. Below that is your emotions. Below that is your physical body. And just briefly to run through this, when you have an intention that's coming from God, source, spirit, power, like whatever you believe in, that intention travels down to your mind. You logically say consciously, yes, that sounds great. I want that. That's amazing. Then that goes to your emotions. And if you got baggage around that intention sends it back to the mind. And then you go, oh shit, no, I got to wait and see. I'll start tomorrow, or that's not possible. I won't, not my parents will never, I'm always gonna be like my parents, or I'm never gonna be able to change, or whatever the excuse is. Then that intention goes to the physical body and you behave consciously and unconsciously in a manner to affirm that limiting belief. Because that's the unconscious mind's job, is to affirm your beliefs of your reality and guide you there.
What is the universe reaching out and giving you a sign? The more you go back to sleep and you deny that, what's the universe going to do?
Yeah, It's called autopilot. People get trapped in it because it's familiar. It's familiar, it's safe, it's comfortable because the brain doesn't perceive stress like it would if you had something attacking you and you need to save your life. And change is difficult, but like you demonstrated with that woman's story, change can happen in an instant. It takes all that time for you to work through all of your baggage to finally accept that you want to change and that it's possible. But with these techniques and with NLP, we get to the root cause right away. We can get into the unconscious mind. We can make a new decision, and then we can test it out moving forward. But it's a little bit more complicated than that. But that was a beautiful story and a beautiful experience to watch, and just to see this stuff come to right. Because it's easy to talk about things like theory is, everyone loves theory, and that's something Dr. Joe talks about. You're either in the program or you're programming your life. And if you can go from being in the program to observing the program and not having judgment, but just be curious, like, that's interesting. Wonder what it would be like if I didn't have that. Then you can go from theory to practitioner of your life. You observe, you hold no judgment, you make a new decision, you learn some things, and then you act. And that's where change comes from. That woman did that. We're doing that. Our clients do that. And that's the beauty of it.
This, we're talking about change and letting it go, and yeah, it absolutely is possible, but with the caveat that you got to be ready. If you're not ready, like if I've got a client on the phone and they're not ready for change, like I can't do anything for them.
Yeah, you can't make people do anything they don't want to do.
One of the first times I've tried some of these things, applying one of these things that we did, I had a client and I'm trying to get him to visualize, and he shut down on me. Now we're going to go back and do it again, but he was just like, no, I can't do it. Can't do it right now. All right, we'll come back to it. You're not ready right now, but what we are cracking, what do we say? We're cracking the outer shell of that. We're getting to the problem. Very soon that you're gonna observe it, you're gonna be aware of it, and you're gonna be ready. But we're not there yet. So we got to create some awareness around it.
Yeah, essentially we're cracking and shattering paradigms and belief structures and all of these things about our subjective reality, because there is no objective reality. Like, we all see the world differently. So when we begin creating change is actually shattering your paradigm of what you believe life is all about and how you show up in life and what's possible for you. And that gets uncomfortable. But you mentioned something earlier, which will lead us into our second assignment, and we'll end on this, was rapport, and how important rapport is for communication, whether it's with you and your unconscious mind or with someone else. And that's where our second assignment comes in, with modalities and really understanding all the different, and I'll explain modalities before we go into our answers, but modalities are things like visual, auditory, kinesthetic, so you're like what you feel and things like that. So it's just basically some of your senses and how you communicate with yourself, with other people, and how you take in and perceive information and then internalize that to give a meaning and then move forward with that. So when we're talking about making change, whether it's yourself or with another person, you have to establish rapport, meaning you have to establish connection and trust and loyalty with yourself or with another person. And the best way to do that is to understand how you operate or how another person operates. And when we're working with a client or with an individual, we're taught to kind of like model them and their gestures, their tone, their language. And because that creates this sense of comfort and safety, because people like people that are like them, so when we're talking about rapport, it's really important to understand these aspects of yourself and to dive deep into it. So I just want to give read from the workbook, actually, the overview of modalities, and then Mitch, you can read the questions for the assignment, and then just read what you came up with, and then I'll finish it off with mine, and we'll have a little discussion before we wrap up. Is that cool?
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is titled An Introduction to NLP in the workbook, and it talks about basic concepts in Neuro Linguistic Programming, which NLP, Neuro Linguistic Programming, is all about noticing patterns. So in NLP, we're not too much interested in content as in the process. Often that is an interesting transition for us to make. The first step is to pay attention to the process of your interaction with others, listen to the form, watch the form, feel the form, and not get involved in the content. The beauty of NLP, mental emotional release, you don't need content. You just need emotions and behavior and beliefs and events. You don't even have to actually have the event, because that's part content. You can do it with or without content, but you don't need content. You just need the root, the limiting beliefs, the negative emotions, and that's all you need really to make change. So the modalities, they say, of course, the next question then is how do you specifically listen to the form, watch the form, feel the form, and not get involved in the content? The modalities are one way of categorizing exactly what a person does inside their head as they think. They are a way or a model for what a person does in their head as they make up an internal representation, an IR. In the process of creating NLP, Brandler and Grindler discovered that by looking at someone's eyes, you could tell how they think, not what they think, but how they think. You can tell what they're doing inside. So there's a diagram, and it has, this is, you're looking at someone. So it's like if you're looking in the mirror, you're seeing yourself, or if you're looking at someone else, you're seeing a mirrored reflection. So they use a right-handed person as an example. And they say eye movements is normally organized in a right-handed person. That's the description of this image. This is how they look when you're facing them. Based on observations by the original researchers, when people look up, they're visualizing. When they look horizontally to the left and right, they're either remembering or constructing sounds. When they look downward and to our right, they're talking to themselves. We call that auditory digital. And the chart above is from a normal right-handed person. Many left-handed people and some ambidextrous people will have eye movements that are reversed. So to give those that are watching a visual, let me get this out and show you. So this is what they're talking about. So you can see, I'll leave it there for a second, but you can see all the different eye movements and what that represents. So if you can memorize these things, you can understand when you're talking to someone, if you pay attention, kind of how they're processing information. And just to quickly go through the modalities, we have VR. This is visual remembered. So this is visual recall, seeing images from the memory, recalling things you've seen before. So questions that'll help this is these are examples. What color was the room you grew up in? What color is your bedroom now? That's an example of a visual recall. The other one, visual constructed. This is visual created, images of things that you've never seen before. When you're making it up in their head, or when you are making up in their head, you are doing visual constructed. So it's, what would your room at home look like if it were blue? Or what would you want it to look like? Things like that. An auditory remembered is recalling something in audio form. It's when you remembered sounds or voices that you've heard before, or things that you've said to yourself before. And they give the example when you ask someone, what was the very last thing I said? They typically look in that direction. The question could be, could you remember the sound of your mother's voice? And if you look at the diagram earlier and you remember things like this, you can see where their eyes are going. I've yet to this is new to me, so I'm not a master of this yet. I haven't even remembered. Actually, it was good practice me going over this as the review or the overview, because that's something I'm going to be picking up on now. It's like trying to watch where people's eyes are going and see, and especially myself. I don't even know how I, move my eyes. And just to finish it up, auditory constructed, we talked about that. Kinesthetic, that's your feelings, your sense of touch. You generally look in this direction when you're accessing your feelings. So again, when I'm saying you generally look in this direction, if you're watching, just recall the image I showed, and you can just make a note, up to the right is this, up to the left is that. And then auditory digital, this is talking to yourself. This is where your eyes move when you're having internal dialogue with yourself. So yeah, that's modalities. It's really understanding how people process information, and you can use eye patterns and track eye patterns to see kind of how they're processing information based upon your conversation and questions. And then just to wrap up my talking, and I'll get Mitch to share his. I'm just going to read my paragraph. Actually, Mitch, do you want to read the questions? Because there was 3 questions that we were going to respond to for our paragraph. So I'll let you read the questions, and then you just read your answer, and then I'll read mine.
So the questions are, what is something valuable that you learned or gained clarity on from those pages that we had to read? What did it help you to remember from your training? And how can you use that information to further impact your communication and or life? Write it all down. So go ahead, Nick.
I'll let you go. What did you come up with?
Yeah, I didn't actually, I didn't write 100, 200 words. I just took some notes on this. So one thing that really jumped out for me, so my notes are kind of all over the place. I don't think I go in any order here, but for me, one of the things that really jumped out was being able to recognize whether a person that I'm talking to is a chunk up or a chunk down, because we work with all different kinds of people, and I can't be the same every time I get on the call with someone. And I really understood that, and I could see how different clients are chunk up and chunk down. Like if I have a chunk down client, now chunk down means getting specific, getting details. that client wants to. You can't give her enough or him enough details.
They want the nitty gritty. They want all of it.
They want to know how many. If you're telling them a smoothie recipe, you got to give them the ounces, the table. I mean, all that stuff. Now, a chunk up is going to be more broad. Hey, like go eat 100 grams of protein, and you could even talk macros with them at that point, you know. But somebody who's a chunk down is going to hear all those macros. Their head's going to blow off. And so I realized that I have some clients that are chunk up and some are down, and I realized that I need to be aware of that and then be able to react, be able to give them what they need. And I can see how in the past in our interactions, I gave them, I brought a lot of confusion to the table.
You can watch people's eyes just glaze over when they're a chunk down person. So a good way to look at that, chunk up is macro, chunk down is micro. So like chunk down is details, but you can see when you get into the nitty gritty of like, let's say biohacking or nutrition biology and someone is just lost, you can see it in their eyes and they're just like, you're like, oh, okay, let's bring this back up to, let's say meats and vegetables rather than like specific ounces and macros.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I realized how this past week I kind of missed the bar. And so this morning I wake up and my chunk down people, I'm like giving them a lot of details and reaching out and making sure kind of got to take care of them a little bit more. Now that my chunk uppers, like they got the big picture, they're good. Don't need to worry about that. So that was eye-opening for me. Next was, creating a rapport, which then leads us in, which then you're able to guide them into the state that you want them to go into. So once this person, we like people that we're like, just like Josh said, once you've created a rapport, and here's the thing, Josh, you kind of hit on this a little bit. One thing that really jumped out for me is for communication, 38% of communication is voice, 55% is physiology. So you're connecting on another level by mirroring, by creating different reports, matching their breathing, crossing their legs like they've got their legs crossed. And so I remember, I guess what did I remember from the course? I remember doing this with inside of the course, and me and my partner did not create rapport whatever. I remember she came in and it was just, we were both confused, and she sat down, she was supposed to tell me a story, and she told me to tell her a story. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't get it. So we were not on the same page. And then she starts telling me, she starts trying to tell me a story, and my eyes are glazed over. I can't even, I'm like, I'm done now. I don't even know what you're talking about. And so, but we weren't even on the same page about the rapport. So when they pulled the room and said, hey, did you create rapport? She like raised her hand and kind of looked at me. I was like, we did not create rapport. So I remember that. And I going into my calls now, I'm going to be looking for these things. And I'll say this, my next point is, for me, I am very kinesthetic. I am so a feel person, right? So for me, and I'm very in the moment. I like to shoot from the hip. I am not, if I try to practice something, like if I'm going to give a talk, and I realized this last night, if I'm going to give a talk, I can't practice it. I just got to go do it. It's got to be from the unconscious. It can't be, I can't try to practice it. So for me to do this properly, I can't be in a conversation and be trying to watch how you're breathing and how you're blinking and what prepositions you're using and all these things. It has to go in the subconscious for me. So I have to do enough repetition that this is something that I'm doing unconsciously, and it's a more of a feel thing for me, which is why once we get off the air, I got some ideas for that, but just throwing that out there.
Yeah, and that's the part of the unconscious. Like all learning is done on an unconscious level, but it takes conscious repetition to make that become unconscious, aka a habit. So with any sport or any skill or anything like that, you start out, ignorant, basically. You're literally unaware of what's going on, how to do it. But then as you learn consciously by doing and participating over time, that becomes unconscious where you actually don't even have to think about it. Just like driving a car, the first time you drove a car, you're probably scared, you're probably focused, you're just, anxious. And then now, years later, you don't even think about it. You get in, you have your routine, put the seatbelt on, turn the car on, mess with your radio, do whatever you gotta do, check your mirrors, and then you just go. Like you don't really think about it. So yeah, that's perfect. I mean, that's the same thing with me. I'm like, how am I gonna have a conversation? And like, all right, look at their eyes, look at their lips, look at their cheeks, like what's going on? Like try to feel, try to hear, like
One thing they point out in the notes too, sorry to interrupt you, I just thought this was hilarious, is like, what if you get caught doing this stuff?
I thought that was funny that they put that in there. Like it does happen, and you can just make a joke about it. So I'm just trying to create unconscious rapport with you, so I can better understand you. just like, why are you analyzing me right now, bro? Like, what are you doing? Like, just like, I did,
I heard that term before we went to the event. Are you NLPing me? But now it's funny. After the event, I hear it everywhere. We were watching a show, just like Josh. When Josh started going through NLP, it was aggravating the shit out of me because he would just be like, "Oh, there's another thing. There's another thing." I'm like, "Bro, just talk." But now it's in my mind and I can't get it out, and I'm just laughing. Like Katie's like, she's laughing at me. She's like, "This is all you talk about now." I'm like, "I know," because I hear it. Like we were watching TV, watching a lady. She had a construction business, and she was just super like programming and anchoring these people and basically telling their subconscious how she wants them to think. It was perfect. I was like, this woman is a pro. But it's like now that I've been exposed to it, it's already going into that subconscious level. So with repetition, it'll be just like putting your seatbelt on and like you said, driving the car.
and that's the objective with these assignments from their perspective, and then our objective from our perspective by doing this podcast is not only are we participating in the conversation by answering the questions, writing them out rather than just picking bubbles. Like that was one of the things they clarified about the test, and like you writing out your answers because you're ingraining it more into yourself. But also with us, it was our idea to be like, all right, let's do something. Let's share this. Let's teach this essentially, because then we're teaching it to ourselves as well. And then we have this to share with other people. And on that note, if you don't want to increase your level of awareness, then I highly suggest you don't get involved with NLP or your life, because then you're going to be aware of it all the time. And it's really hard to turn it off. But that could be argued too, because you become aware of inability to turn it off, then you could turn it off. So that's more of just a joke. So I encourage everyone to become aware. There was a quote I heard the other day that you have to get involved to evolve. So you have to get involved with your life in every which way to evolve. Unless you're completely content and happy right now, you got to get involved to evolve. And I think we all want to evolve. We don't want to stay stagnant. We all are human beings. We're hardwired to progress. We love dopamine and gratification and fulfillment. And yeah, so you got to get involved to evolve.
Before we move on to you, I had one more point. So one of the things we kind of touched on when we were jumping on the call is I am super loud and aggressive. And that's what Katie tells me all the time. You are so aggressive. And so I'm not aware of that. I'm passionate. I get excited. And hell yeah, I'm loud as hell. So me learning to be more aware of that and how my message lands with a particular person is going to be huge. So I can know when I'm connecting and when I'm missing the mark. And I've found that with some people, like I'm so loud and I'm so into it and I'm getting passionate. And meanwhile, and I look over and I'm waiting to see their eyes like lit up, like me and Josh, when we met, we started talking about our passions of health and wellness. And dude, we look like our eyes were like saucers. Yes, somebody gets me. Hell yeah. But I look over to like a client that I'm talking to or someone off the street, and I look over. I think we're on the same page. I think we've got that rapport. I want to see those saucers and their jaws on the floor or their eyes are glazed over, and I just completely missed that when I could have easily seen some cues, took a left turn, and still had rapport with that person, and who knows what else could have come out of the conversation. It's being more productive, better communication, so that both parties just get more out of
it. Yeah, you want to understand each other, because that's really the only way to change is to understand where you are, what you want to do, why you want to do it, why you want this to be true. And if you're trying to help someone, you got to understand where they are, because we can't just distort their reality by projecting our beliefs onto them. We got to understand what their beliefs are and guide them. So that's definitely a big important piece of this for sure, especially around the word rapport. But yeah, cool. Well, let me share mine and then we'll wrap it up. So my answer to all those three questions, I basically answered each one in my notes and then just kind of formed it into a paragraph and 141 words. if you were wondering, that's the analytical part of me that loves numbers. So my response was, one profound piece of value I learned more about was the modalities and how to use them to better understand others with regards to eye movement and how they process information without getting into the content of the other person speaking. Also learning that based on our preferred model of communication via visual, auditory, or kinesthetic, we can also understand how we and others access and process information to create our internal representations. Being able to understand this process helps me better understand my processing and communicating of information, but also allows me to better understand and comprehend what others are communicating with me. These pages help me remember and better understand the rapport training and how I can apply being able to pick up on various modalities in others in our conversations to create more solid rapport with another person. So that was what I came up with. Yeah. But I think, wrapping this up, like rapport is the first step to change, I'd say. Like you got to have rapport with yourself. You got to have rapport with other people. And I think rapport to me, what rapport means to me on a macro sense, just an understanding. If you can understand another person, you have rapport. If you can understand yourself, you have rapport. And then you can get into the unconscious mind and you can expose things for what they are. You can observe them, and then you can consciously change them. And then we know with repetition over time and focus, those new conscious learnings and actions become embedded into our programming of who we believe we are and what we believe our reality to be. And I think rapport is the first step to change.
Definitely. And I have two examples or one exercise I want to do. I thought it'd be fun. And then an example of rapport. So one of the things that we talk about in rapport, one of the things that it's outlined in the chapter that we read is you're going to feel it. And so I'm a feeler, and I know what they're talking about as soon as they said that. And so I don't remember the words exactly, but you're going to feel it in your legs, and you're going to feel like you're going to feel the blood in your face move a little bit. And once you feel it in yourself, and maybe you said in your chest as well, I would maybe heart centered, something like that. But it's a feeling of lifting up, of blood rushing, of circulation. And you can bet almost that 1 to 2 minutes after that, the other person's going to go into that mode too. And that's where I was talking about in the beginning of, if once I have rapport, well, now I can guide you into a state. Now I can guide you into relaxation. I can guide you into projecting. I can guide you where we need to go, where it's going to be successful. And I think a great example of someone who does this that we both know is Dr. Kate. So Kate Godley, she's a functional medicine practitioner here in the area that we're at in Durham, Functional Medicine Center of Durham. And she does this amazing every time. And I didn't really realize it until last night. And I had a meeting with her the day before. And I think Josh did the day before that. So I noticed that when I sit down with her, I got a lot on my mind. I got a lot of things going on right now. I'm working on these hormones. I've got this thyroid issue that I'm working on, and it's getting better. And so when I show up, I'm kind of anxious, man. I'm anxious to chat. But Kate just always puts me into rapport so quickly and changes my state. I always leave there going like, damn, I just love being around Kate. Like I just go there just to get the energy from her. And so I think that's something that we can model like NLP in our life. And then the other thing that I thought would be really cool would be, why don't we try to guess each other's dominant modalities?
Okay.
So I'm going to go first and guess yours. I think that you are visual.
Yeah.
The reason I'll say that is because I know you like watching Joe Rogan on YouTube clips. I see that whenever you're looking, let's see, which way were you looking a minute ago? Well, no, when you were talking, you kept looking auditory, digital, auditory, remember, and that makes sense. What was it else that made me think that you were visual? I almost thought you were kinesthetic because you kind of slow down a little bit. You're like, I don't mean that you're slow, but you like to slow down, or maybe I'm just so fast sometimes that I think that. But
I think I sometimes unconsciously do that when I'm talking with you to get you to slow down.
Projecting on me a little bit.
No, you're spot on. I mean, I think I'm primarily visual and then kinesthetic and then auditory after. And I know that because if I'm listening to an audiobook and I want to really pay attention to it, I need to read at the same time. That's why I prefer to read than listen to audiobooks. It's more daunting to me because I'm not a very fast reader. Probably because I make sure I'm trying to like comprehend what I'm reading. But yeah, I'd rather watch a podcast than listen to a podcast. And I mean, when I'm driving or something like that, obviously I'll listen to it, but I'm a visual person. The way I process information in my mind, it's visual. I think we went over this at the event actually, and I was like, yeah, like they're speaking to me. Like that's I see things in images and pictures. I mean, our conscious mind does anyways, but like I consciously, yeah.
Definitely say you're visual.
Yeah, and I'd say with you, obviously, I mean, you said it earlier, like I pick up more of you being a kinesthetic person, like feeling things. And I've seen that in different experiences that we've been involved with, and I can see that just in conversation. And then I'd say after that, I would guess that you're probably more of an auditory person before you'd be a visual person, with your preferring to listen to books and your chattiness and the words you use. That's just what comes to mind to me. But definitely, I think your preferred would definitely be kinesthetic.
Aesthetic. So I am very feel, so dead on there. But when I listen, I'm very auditory, 100%. And I didn't realize that, for listening, I didn't realize that I was auditory until after college. It's funny. I used to always say, like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. I went to business school just to fucking go to business school, because like there's a lot of good lessons to learn, and you can use that in business in your life, the rest of your life. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but then I had this tragedy, and I fell in love with health and wellness, because I started listening to Bulletproof Radio podcast. And I remember I wanted to get in the car so bad every day, because I was in sales, and I'd be driving back and forth seeing customers, and I would knock out like 3 or 4 podcasts a day. And that's how I learned. Like, people ask me, like, when I get on a call, like, what's your certification? How are you certified to do this? And I'm like, man, it's school of hard knocks, dude. Like, I tried it all. I learned, and I listened, and I tried it on, and that's what got me where I am today.
Yeah, for sure. Well, to wrap this up, I think NLP to me is it's a game changer. It's all about creating change and creating awareness and understanding how we process information, and how that information that's processed determines our values, our belief structures, our mindset, and unconsciously how we behave to affirm those beliefs and values to ourselves. And then with rapport, it's the most important step of communication, because two people can be saying the exact same thing, but if they're not understanding one another because they don't have rapport with one another, they could be saying the same thing but disagreeing with each other because they're not understanding one another. And I think to understand, you have to have that rapport.
And what I said is subconsciously not liking each other, right? People that we liked, and so subconsciously, if you aren't hitting, you're not liking each other. So if you're doing this with a client, I don't think that's not very productive, right? So it's where NLP creates awareness, and you can start to see the cues of, is my message landing or not, and how do I need to adjust so that I can communicate with this person and get them on board, so that I can change their state, change their life.
Yeah, and I think NLP, the last thing I want to say, to me, NLP helps create more empathy, because when we look at people that we would say they're a bad person, for example, I don't believe that there's bad people. I think there's just hurt people that are unhealthy in one which way. More than one way, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, whatever. And so when we can use NLP to better understand a person, automatically my mind goes to, I wonder what they went through. We look at, for example, like, the former president. To me, I was like, my initial reaction was like, man, this guy sucks. Like, he's so harmful in his words to people. But then I started thinking, I was like, well, I wonder how much pain he's in. So many people see him from an outside perspective being so successful, got to have the life, but then you see he's very overweight. You can see he's run down, he's stressed, he's angry. And it's like, all right, what did he go through? And then you learn actually his past, and it's like, oh, okay, he, in my mind, didn't get the proper love and support from his father, but he always tried to be like his father and was never good enough, even though he surpassed him in money. And it's like, oh, well, that makes sense. Okay. And then so to me, NLP has allowed me to, understand people and have more empathy rather than first interaction or first response to be like, oh, they're a bad person. How many times do we hear that person sucks? Like, they're an asshole. Are they, or did they just have some shit happen to them that's how they? Because that was another thing in NLP. They say at the purest intent of someone, or the core of someone, is their purest intent in their behavior. So they may be, attacking someone because in their mind, unconsciously, that's their ego saying that's how we protect ourselves. So I think everyone's pure at their core. It just comes out in different ways based on their model of the world, based on their experiences that now create these filters or lenses. So, yeah.
I had a similar conversation yesterday with someone on social media who follows me, and we kind of chat back and forth a little bit. And we were kind of, there's a story that I posted, and she's telling me she likes it or whatever, and then quickly it shifted into, not like kind of we're on one side. Let's say we're carnivore and other people are vegans, and we don't like vegans because they're not like us. And I was quick to say, where in the past I might be like, yeah, fuck vegans, where this time I went, you know what? Everybody is doing the best that they can with the resources that they have right now. So they're giving you the best that they got. They don't know any better. And so I said, these people that you're talking about, they're doing the best that they can, and it's our jobs. They're doing the best they can with the resources they have. So basically, they don't even know what they don't know, right? So I was saying, so it's our job to educate so that other people can have the opportunity to elevate as well. And it's just kind of relating to that. I mean, everybody's doing the best they can. They're in their program, and until you create awareness and decide that program is no longer serving you, then that's just the best you can do right now. And we're all on our path, we're all trying to get better, and take something that you've learned like we do and share it. Like, don't judge that person. Maybe they don't know any better. And I was telling a client last night, be the weird dude, man. Be the weird guy that brings your Primal Kitchen dressing to the dinner. And when your boys are making fun of you, go, hey man, I got to lose 100 pounds. This is what it's going to take. You might get some chuckles, but after that dinner, they're going to come back to you and be like, hey man, what are you doing? What's working? How are you doing all this? Give me the inside scoop.
Yeah, no doubt. I think that's a good place to end, is just, be curious and to try to figure out, what's going on behind the scenes, and, what do you want to be true about your life. And these are techniques that you can use to better understand yourself, better understand others, and ultimately create the life that you want. So yeah, let's leave it there. And then we'll come back in the next episode and talk about our other assignments and what we've learned and what we want to share with you.
And for the audience too, I think this is our first podcast together in 6-8 months. We did a lot last year.
Been a couple weeks. It's been a couple weeks. No, it's been, I'd say like 2 or 3 months since we last recorded.
It's been fun though, man. Getting back into it. I'm feeling it. I'm loving it. I'm excited to dive into this NLP stuff. So thanks to the audience for listening along. And we're excited to keep sharing.
Yeah, no doubt.